In this video article, we're going to look at the 2 things fiction writers should never use AI for and the 3 things that you can use AI for. Before we get started, if you want to get an email with a time-stamped overview every time I release a new video like this, head over to deliberate-practice.com, sign up for my email list. There's a form on nearly every page. There's other content at that website, plus in the upcoming weeks and months there'll be some thank you goodies which will be email list only, and thank you for signing up. Okay, let's start with a caveat. I don't view AI as artificial intelligence. I view it as algorithmic intelligence. But I must say, caveat to my caveat, I'm not an expert in AI, nor do I play one on TV, yada yada yada. I don't think AI is intelligent in the way that we view intelligence. It's the best metaphor I've seen of it is that AI is like predictive text on your phone over exponentially more powerful because it's got millions upon millions upon millions more potential choices than the predictive text on your phone has. The problem with this millions and millions and millions more choices is it's based on training data that the AI companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and all the rest use to train their models. And that training data ranges from great to average to mediocre. And again, not an AI expert, but from what I've seen and heard, when the training data was given to the LLMs, the large language models, to learn from, it was not weighted in the sense that, say, a piece of Shakespeare was given to it and the LLM was told, this is Shakespeare, this is in the top 1 percentile of great writing, or this is from another, some really shitty writer, this is in the bottom 1% of writing, so that the AI models could draw more from the greater stuff than the mediocre stuff. Again, I might be wrong with that, but as far as I know, that wasn't done. It was just given a slew of data to train itself off, and it also trains off stuff on the internet. And I'm sure if your experience of the internet is anything like mine, the majority of the content is average to mediocre. So bear that in mind whenever you use AI for anything. The results will trend towards average, just down to that bias in the training data. I'm going to give you a little definition of writing, how I see it. Writing is the medium that writers, people like me, you, aspiring writers, is the medium we use to create art. And art is a form of self-expression. And successful art requires that the reader, who are consuming the media that we use to express our art with, experiences some kind of emotion or some kind of feeling as a result of interacting with our writing, and usually that emotion is intended, the writer intends the reader to feel that emotion, and it's often based on either our experience as the writer or things we've seen, things we've done, things we've read, all those kind of things. On the other side of the coin is hack work, and hack work is where writing is used to try and create the same kind of reader experiences, but it's not based on the writer's unique combination of personality and experiences and worldview and all those kind of things. Instead, it's done for monetary reasons. And my view on this is, if you're writing fiction as a way to make money, there are easier ways to do it than being a hack fiction writer. And if you are a hack fiction writer, or if that's what you're intending to do, we should probably part ways now. None of what I will say on this channel will be of much interest to you, I don't think. I'm not interested in writing for money per se. I'm interested in writing stories to get the experience of having readers write to me and say, I've just read this story of yours, really enjoyed it, it made me cry, it made me happy, I couldn't put it down, I read till 3 a.m. Any of those kind of responses. I've had those kind of responses with some of my non-fiction books, my music teaching books, and it always makes my day when I get an email from a student saying, "Hey, I've just finished this book you wrote, and it's transformed the way I view the bass guitar and how I practice and how I play." Those emails are worth more than the money I've made by a exponential factor, worth more than the money I've made on those individual books. And that's what I'm looking to do with my fiction writing. So if you're looking to write some fiction to make money as your primary purpose, we probably should not be in the same spaces, because we're going to be talking about different things. Okay, that being said, the number one thing fiction writers should not use AI for, this won't come as any surprise to you if you've made it through the preamble, and that is your writing. Your writing is the only way that you can express your uniqueness to potential readers, and if you use AI to do that for you, no matter how much info you give it, AI is always going to default to an average, and that average can look okay on the page, but it's devoid of everything that makes your writing uniquely yours and expresses your worldview. But it's also, and I'm going to try and do a test of this, it's something that literally just occurred to me as I was getting a drink just prior to recording this, and I'm going to write a story, and I'm going to get AI to write a story where it makes the majority of the decisions with very little hands-on guidance from me. And I'm going to try and feed it my story and say, write your story in a similar style, and give those two stories to people I know who read and say, can you tell which of these stories was written by AI, which was written by me? And if so, how can you tell? So that's going to be an experiment I'm going to run. And when I get results, I've forgotten the date already. It's August the 7th today, 2025. When I get the results in the next month or so, I'll do another video article on those. But I think most human readers will there'll be something that's just flat and not there on the page for them in something that's written by AI, especially in fictional terms. The number two thing that fiction writers should not use AI for, again, this won't be a surprise, and it's coming up with story ideas in the first place. So your stories, just like your writing, are products of your experiences. In fact, more than your writing, are products of your experiences. They reflect your unique worldview, how a character would react in a specific situation. AI, if you ask AI to come up with a story, even if you give it lots of details like, I want this story to be about a detective, he's 35, and you take cliches from the Pulp Fiction stories of the 30s and 40s, those kind of crime stories, and you update that for contemporary times, and you feed the AI details about the story, it will still, just like the writing that I talked about in the previous slide, it will still feel flat and uninvolving, and there won't be any unusual twists and surprises that a human writer comes up with. Because the thing about humans is we have our own internal story processor, as it were, and we see things and go, oh, that leads to that. And those things aren't necessarily linear, but can be set up so that the reader, when he gets to your conclusion, will go, wow, I never saw that coming. But of course, that makes total sense. AI struggles to do anything remotely like that. So if you're getting AI to come up with your story ideas, they're going to be flat and uninvolving, not be unique to you, not reflect your worldview. For me, it's a definite no-no. At the end of the day, only you can tell your stories, and this is even more so the case if your subgenre is something that's not done very often by other writers, and so there's not much out there to draw from for other readers. Even more so, you need to have a unique worldview with those stories, and then look to connect to the readers who subconsciously have been looking for this type of story. AI, in my opinion, won't do that for you. Again, as I've just mentioned, I'm going to run that test, and I might run it several times and see what the results are. I'm betting myself that every time the human reader will, given a choice of 2 stories, will detect the AI story every time. Okay, let's move to things that you can use AI for. The number one thing that I've chosen is a 24/7 Socratic brainstorming partner. Now, that sounds pretty fancy, but basically what it means, and I've not heard many people talk about this, is when you're working on something, be it a story, being it scenes, being it ideation, you create a context document that can also help the AI with a detailed workflow. And you give it to the AI, and you just get basically the AI to interview you. Use the workflow as a guide for the AI to ask a series of questions, and then it records your answers. And those series of questions are designed to get to the end point of whatever process you're on, whether it's ideation or whether you're coming up with scene ideas, whether you're writing a sequence. I've started process documents for all these different separate jobs. One of the first things that I put in these documents, by the way, is that the AI is going to interview me, and its job is to ask the prompts in the workflow that it will find below, and record my answers, interact if I ask questions about my answers, but to never provide details of story or characters or anything like that. And one of the first things I do when I'm using one of these workflows, I've got 2 that are in development and are starting to give me really interesting results. I'll probably share those in the vault. You'll see that on the last screen at the end of the video. But what I do with the first question is go to the appropriate part of the AI where the workflow document, context document is, and the first thing I type is, we're going to work on an idea or an outline or a scene or a sequence or whatever it is. Please confirm that you understand that you are not to prompt or suggest any ideas, but simply to prompt me with the questions from the workflow, make notes of my answers, and then respond when I ask questions about my answers. So what that does is it makes sure that all the answers are coming from your writing brain, and it's just a way of brainstorming using open-ended questions which you have to provide the answers for. So questions could be as simple as who is your main character? Let's say you're writing a short story. This is like an ideation kind of thing. Who is your main character? And you write a 34-year-old detective. Next question could be, is your main character male or female? If you've not given the answer. Or it could be, what is the problem that your main character has to deal with in this story? And you write a paragraph. And then the next question could be, who is the person or character that represents the opposing force that will come into conflict with the protagonist? And again, you can see from those questions, the questions don't suggest specific plot points. They're very open-ended questions, and the idea is that you write open-ended answers, and those open-ended answers start to coalesce into the character is going to be here, he's going to get this problem to deal with, he's got to do this, 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 and this before he can get to there. And you start to form a story, and all of those story points, character points, plot points, thematic points, all come from you, the writer. The AI is just a glorified secretary that's on call 24/7. This, by the way, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful things that you can use AI for. You'll come up with some incredible answers, and I think it will really surprise you. As I say, I am developing this at the moment and using this to come up with ideas and stories and scenes and sequences and stuff, and I'll be writing more about this in the vault and putting some of my documents in with instructions on how you use them so you can use them. You'll see the details on the vault at the end of this video, and there's a link in the description below. The second thing you can use AI for, and I ummed and ahed and swapped these slides around 5 or 6 times because this is nearly as important as the previous slide, is training and practice. Now, my view on the existing material that's out there on practicing writing is that it is utterly fucking woeful. No one in the writing space, and there are some great writing teachers out there, but none of the writing teachers out there have, from what I can see, ever been exposed to the discipline that we now call either acquisition of expertise, acquisition of talent, or deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is something I've been using with music students for 15, 17 years, so I've had a long time using it, finding out what works, finding out what doesn't. And when I see people talk about practicing writing by doing writing, I just close my eyes and smack myself in the face, because the advice out there is terrible. I'm going to be going to create some stuff to help writers get over this, but for the purposes of this video, training and practice is something that you can use AI for, because writing, and that's non-fiction as well as fiction, is made up of multiple sub-disciplines, and you need to master those sub-disciplines to the point of unconscious competence. The discipline that I compare writing to the most is jazz improvisation. And if you speak to a jazz improviser, if you know someone or go to a gig where there's jazz on, go and buy a musician a drink and ask him what he's thinking about when he's playing, when he's improvising, not when he's playing the melody, but when he's improvising or she's improvising. And what they will tell you is, I'm just playing what I'm hearing in my head. They're not thinking of how do they translate what they're hearing in their head to their instrument. They're not thinking of scales. They're not thinking of scale substitutions, how they connect chords, quoting famous phrases in jazz, or any of the million things that can go into jazz improvisation. They're playing what they hear in their head. And for me, writing, the best writing comes when you write in flow and you're doing the writing equivalent of that. You're basically just writing, and the writing's coming from the subconscious part of your brain, and your fingers are just basically taking dictation. And when you truly get into flow, that's what happens. If you don't write like that, you can learn how to write in flow. I've got a course that I created for non-fiction writers to learn in flow, but the principles are the same for fiction writers. If you're interested, just email me. The email address will be at the end of the video. But when you're writing in flow, your writing can only be as good as the sub-disciplines that you've mastered to the point of unconscious competence. This is where AI can come in, because you can split and slice and dice the field of writing down into hundreds of different disciplines. The beauty is some of them you can master with 5 hours of practice. If you did only 15 minutes of practice a day and did it every day of the week, you'll rack up 100 hours of practice by the end of the year, and that 100 hours could allow you to master 10 to 15 sub-disciplines that aren't currently mastered, you haven't currently mastered, to the point of unconscious competence, which means you're using them, you don't even know you're using them. The same way that you drive. If you've been driving for more than a year, when you're driving, you're just driving. Your brain doesn't think about, I've got to change gear, therefore I need to decelerate, I need to depress the clutch, I need to take the gear stick out of gear, blah, blah, blah. You don't think of any of those. There are hundreds of actions in just a few hundred yards of driving. You don't think of any of those. You're just driving. You've automated it to the point of unconscious competence, and your body just handles it and deals with it. So you don't have to think about it. It's the same with writing in flow. You're just writing, but you can only use more advanced things, even semi-medium advanced things like complex metaphors, rhetorical devices, bucket loads of things. You can only use those in flow if you've already mastered them to the point of unconscious competence. And AI is a fabulous training and practice partner. It's easy to set up, and it can give you as much practice or as little practice as you need. You can ask it to tell you what you've done wrong, suggest things to improve, and then improve in that discipline. And this is not your actual writing that we're talking about. It's writing used for practice. And I can't think of any writer stroke teacher who's ever said you should have separate practice writing sessions. Most people say, oh, you just write a short story and then write another one and you'll learn and blah, 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 blah. My God, that is such an inefficient way to learn. I'll be talking more about this because it drives me fucking bananas, because it's so wrong. It's so against every principle of neuroscience that's been added to the scientific models of learning since the early 1990s. If you saw the video on, which I published recently, 5 non-writing books every writer should read. One of those books was actually 2 or 3, and it was books on deliberate practice. Go and buy yourself one of the deliberate practice books. Talent is Overrated by Jeff Colvin's my favourite. Go and buy that and start reading it and start understanding how the brain learns. Writing is not a unique discipline in terms of how the brain learns. So the majority of the advice out there is just either wrong or it's a long-winded way of learning. For example, imagine the writing advice applied to golf. It would be just go and play a game of golf. And so every time you went on a round, let's say the one shot that was really letting you down was you were just beyond the green. The green. I'm not a golfer, by the way, but this analogy comes from taking my son and walking around talking to him while he was playing golf on his own the other day. If you're just beyond a green and you have to chip the ball up with a wedge to get it near to the hole before you can putt it in, if you play a round of golf, you maybe practice that 18 times if you're lucky, depending on how the ball lies. You might hit a great shot and the ball goes straight to the green so that you don't need to practice that little wedge. The more effective way of practicing that wedge would be to go to a green or a similar thing or a driving range and hit 200, 300, 400 shots in a row, one after the other, correcting and getting it perfect. So much more efficient way to learn. It's the same with writing. You can see I'm slightly irritated about this because the advice out there is so bad for so many people. As I say, AI can help you, and I'll be talking more about this in the future. The third and last way you can use AI for is very quick and easy research, and I'll fly through this because I got a bit carried away in the last screen. I use this for very simple questions that only have to be kind of about right, and it doesn't matter if they're slightly off. And the example I'm going to give you, I kind of knew the answer anyway, and I just wanted it to be confirmed. So for a story I was thinking about, I needed a rough price for a bottle of tequila in a Paris nightclub in the mid-90s. And I know that's a really specific thing. I had an idea of the answer. I typed what I needed into my AI. I tend to use Claude AI. And I went off to make a cup of coffee, and by the time I come back, it had looked at websites and it came back with a price range of 800 to 1200 francs. In my head, I thought it was about 1,000 francs. So I was good to go with that, and I didn't need to check anything else. One caveat, if you are going to do detailed research, you can use AI as a starting point, but everything needs to be verified. Don't rely on AI to give you accurate details for something that's integral to the plot point. So if, for example, you're writing a murder mystery and the murder hinges on a specific firing mechanism of a pistol, do not under any circumstances rely on AI to give you that advice. You need to either speak to someone who knows their guns or find a reference manual which will give you that idea, and ideally find a reference manual that will give you the knowledge, and then speak to someone about guns and say, excuse me, I'm writing a story, I need to know if this is correct, can you tell me? And you never know, you might get a little bit of detail which you can use in your story, which just adds a bit more colour to your story and makes you sound like you know what you're talking about in detail. Okay, so closing out. You may or may not agree with me on some of those points. That's absolutely fine. I did this video actually for me so that I could understand how I viewed AI and in the process of prepping and then filming the video. It made me realize what I will never use AI for unless it's a test like I spoke about, and what I would use AI for. Either way is cool. As writers, we all have to find our own paths to writing, and it's different for all of us, and your path looks different from mine. Some parts of it might align with mine. That's great. Some parts of it won't. But if you've got questions or comments, let me know, paul@deliberate-practice.com. And I spoke briefly about the Writing Vault, and I'll be putting some of my workflow documents, context documents in there with instructions on how to use them. The URL for that is here. There's a link in the description below this video as well, so you can go and check that out. As I said, it's the 7th of August. They haven't gone in yet. I'm still working on some, but I would anticipate by the end of August, at least the first couple will be in there, and you can start using them and start going, oh, this is interesting, but what about if I change this? And you'll have the documents, so you'll be able to change it on the fly in your AI and personalize it for you. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. I'd be interested to see what you agreed with and what you didn't. So do let me know. Thank you for your time, and I will catch you in the next video.